Good morning and welcome to the winter commencement ceremonies of Baylor University School of Law. To open our ceremonies this morning, I call upon Charles Emmerich Hardy Jr., sometimes known as Chase and sometimes known as Chuck, to deliver the invocation.
Thank you, Dean. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I suspect that many in the audience have traveled a great distance to witness this graduation ceremony today. Whether you arrived by car or by plane or by the B&O Railroad, your journey here was no doubt meaningful and reflective of the love you share for one of my classmates. I assure you, however, that the journey my classmates have taken to arrive at this same destination was much, much different. Sure, we traveled by similar earthly means beside one another, assisted by our family, our friends, and our faculty. But make no mistake, my brothers and sisters, mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. The journey of a Baylor lawyer, you see, is not a mere creation of man. It is inspired. It is anointed by the divine, and how wonderful that our journey ends and begins anew in this mighty house of God. My dear friends, before we begin this ceremony, I'm going to ask that we bow our heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this momentous occasion, for allowing our class to stand upon this summit and gaze at the promised land you have laid before us. Come, Holy Spirit, light our way, inspire us, guide us, fortify us, and stand beside us as we prepare to empower the weak, defend the defenseless, and pursue justice to the ends of the earth. O Lord, prosper the work of our hands, and let us never forget that what we do for the least of these, our brothers and sisters, we do for you as well. We ask for the strength to keep your law, to observe it with all of our hearts, and always remember that Christ fulfilled the letter of the law so that we may serve in the new way of the Spirit. Lord Jesus Christ, Creator of the world and designer of our talents, grant us the wisdom to know the plan you have for us and the determination to follow it through, so that we may bring glory to your kingdom, now and forevermore. In the name of the strong deliverer, the King of kings, the Lord of lords, our Savior and our Redeemer, Jesus Christ, amen. Amen.
Chase, very spot on, very moving. R.E.B. Baylor was not only a lawyer, but also ordained. You're a preacher. Go for it. Truett Seminary. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the winter commencement ceremonies of Baylor University School of Law. We have, as Chase noted, a great gathering here of family and friends and loved ones. And I now actually just echo what Chase shared with us a moment ago in his remarks. Each of you, now speaking to the class, each of you are here because you've been through a lot. You've been through the Baylor Law School 3-year program that has been described as the Marine Corps boot camp of law school programs. You have survived, you have earned it, you've come a long ways even before you began at Baylor Law, but you didn't get here on your own, and I know you're all completely aware of that. You're here because you have had parents, you have had spouses, grandparents, aunts, uncles, children supporting you at each juncture. Your parents go all the way back to the beginning, obviously. They are here, and they have traveled the journey with you. And because of that, I want to begin our ceremony by having the class rise, turn around, and let's show our love, thanks, and appreciation to those who brought you to this point of accomplishment. Thank you all for being here. You should be so proud of your graduate, and we are aiming, of course, in the ceremony to create a memory. We want you to be able to look back at this point as a point of commencement, of going on now to the next stage of your life and your career. Baylor Law School is all about rigor, to be sure, but it's also about the development, the training, the education of Baylor lawyers. And the class knows well, my colleagues know well, that whenever I say the word Baylor lawyer, I always remind those listening that if you write it or if you type it, it's with a capital B, of course, obviously, but it's also with a capital L because it is a brand and it's not just a descriptor. You're all going to be Baylor lawyers. You're going to carry forth on the path that we have set for you, that we have encouraged you to follow through your life and through your professional career, and that is a pathway of service. At orientation 3 years ago, you may hearken back, you heard a lot, you drank from a fire hose over the 3 days of orientation, but one thing I reminded you of, and I know my colleagues did as well, is that the legal profession, being a lawyer, being a Baylor lawyer, is all about service. It's all about reaching out to make it happen for those who cannot achieve an end by themselves, and they will be looking to you as trained professionals, as ethical professionals, to take them where they need to be. We are here, remember, for two purposes: the vertical, to serve God's kingdom; the horizontal, we serve others, and through serving others, we serve God's kingdom. Always remember that that vertical and horizontal dimension must characterize your life and your professional work as you're going forward. We have today a gathering at which at Baylor Law School we always take cognizance of the linkage between our profession, the legal profession, and our veterans. We do it at every commencement. Why? It's often not noted that the legal profession and our armed forces are very much linked. We as lawyers, we are the guardians of the judicial system, the legal profession, and the rule of law. Our military, those who serve in the armed forces, create security for all of us around the globe, and but for that security that is provided, which we often take for granted, we would not be able to do our work as professionals. And so with that in mind, I would like every active, retired, and reserved military personnel, please stand now for our appreciation. The movie stars and the athletes are not the heroes. You are the heroes. You are the heroes. Now, on that same note, Shana Marie Hayes Swanson is going to share some remarks with you on behalf of her class. Shana, come up here with me. Shana came to us after 6 years of active service in the military. She was deployed to Afghanistan. Now you may be thinking, okay, Afghanistan, but what was she doing there? Shana was a bomb diffuser in Afghanistan. Okay, enough said.
Good morning, Dean Tobin, distinguished guests, faculty, staff, family and friends, and of course, fellow graduates. The past two and a half years has been a growing season for me, and I'm sure for all of us here. I have been pushed out of my comfort zone, and I can confidently say that each of us graduating here today has been pushed out of theirs. We've been pushed to do things we never would have done on our own, and for some of us, pushed to do things we never thought ourselves capable of. Whether it's in the in-school moot court competition, client counseling, or Top Gun competitions, or being part of a moot court or mock trial team and traveling to other schools to compete, we've all been pushed and we've all grown. Then, of course, there was the biggest growing season, practice court, which we have all now successfully completed. We've been given such a solid foundation, but that's only the beginning. I strongly believe that it is not our past and our abilities that make us who we are, it's the choices we make on a daily basis. Everybody graduating here today made the choice to take a chance and go to law school. And not only that, they came to Baylor Law School to be pushed and to be challenged and to go through practice court. And I think we're all stronger for it. And also, over the last 2.5 to 3 years, everybody graduating here has made the choice every day to keep going, which I think is pretty incredible. We have all come to Baylor Law for different reasons. Some of us knew from the beginning what we wanted to do and who we wanted to be, and we came here to seek that and have achieved it. Others needed to learn through trial and error or through other careers that law was where they wanted to be, and that's how they came here. But no matter what path we took, none of us have done this alone. One thing I feel confident in saying is that everybody here today has relied on everyone in the audience and countless others who have been there along the way to support us. So thank you for your prayers and your encouragement and your support to help us get where we are today. And that support for me is my family and my amazing husband, Nathan, who's been there as my motivation from day one to encourage and support me and to make me better each day, and I'm grateful every day for that. Beyond our family and friends, on behalf of our class, I want to thank our faculty and staff who've been there not just in the classrooms, but beyond it. So thank you for answering our hundreds of questions and for giving us support when things went bad and celebrating with us when things went well, and for your guidance and support. I think it's perfect that today is Groundhog's Day, because that is very descriptive of what we have been through in the last 2.5 to 3 years. And it's the start of a new season, as today is the start of a new season for all of us. I'm grateful for Baylor, who has prepared us for that season, and I'm grateful for knowing each of you. So congratulations to the first graduating class of 2019.
Excellent, Shana. We're proud of you. So proud of what you are going to be as a Baylor lawyer and what you have already done for our nation. This morning, we have a guest, of course, on the stage, and we have faculty and staff colleagues who are present. I take note of them because the Law Center, at which you will be for the reception afterwards, is a building. It's pretty, it's right on the river, looks across to McLean Stadium. Folks often say, wow, what a neat building this is, what a neat place to study the law. I always emphasize, though, the building is not Baylor Law School. The building is what happens in our classrooms, in our courtrooms, when the faculty offices, what happens in the interactions among the students and the faculty. That is what develops a Baylor lawyer. We are very pleased this morning to have, as part of our graduation ceremony here, Dr. Gary Carini. Dr. Carini is my boss. He is the vice provost of the university. He acts as the chief academic officer of the university. He comes out of the Hankamer School of Business. He is a professor of management as well, although he's been in his provostial duties for some time now. And you will note in the bulletin, which you have for the ceremony, that we have a lot of biographical information. I'm not going to repeat that. I just don't like doing that type of thing. I like painting people for their meaning in our program. Dr. Carini, you're a cheerleader for the law school consistently, and that means the world to me and all of our colleagues. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Have you heard the name Jerry Powell? With or without other descriptors? Professor Powell, PC, practice court, the gauntlet in the third year, of course, run not only across the coals in front of Professor Powell, but also Professor Rem and Professor Fraley and Professor Consular as well. Practice court, of course, is a gemstone of Baylor Law School. All the loved ones and families here have heard of it, obviously. Jerry Powell has been on the faculty now for well over 30 years, 33 years. He is iconic on the faculty. Practice court is such that when Baylor lawyers meet one another, they very seldom identify themselves by class. They don't, for instance, say class of 74, class of 06, or class of 13, or the like. They always go immediately to who the director of the practice court program was when they went through. A Wilson product, an Underwood product, a Muldrow product, a Mad Dog Dawson product. Jerry, you are a master teacher, and that's not my descriptor. At the university, over the past many years, about 20 faculty out of about 1,000 faculty have received the designation of master teacher. And Professor Jerry Powell is one of them, and he is the quintessential definition of what it means to be a master teacher. Thank you, Jerry. Professor Ryan, the students see Professor Ryan in their federal jurisdiction, appellate advocacy work, oil and gas. Professor Ryan, how should I say this? He just graduated at the top of everything, college and law school, and he clerked for the Fifth Circuit. He is someone who combines practice with teaching because they fertilize each other, so to say. And Professor Ryan receives consistent accolades as a teacher that really knows how to handle the classroom, how to encourage the students, how to bring them along and develop them into Baylor lawyers. Thank you, Professor Ryan. Dean Leah Teague. Dean Teague and I have been together now in the Dean's Suite for about 28 years, and we have worked together through many a matter over the many years. I always note that when I come out into the hallway between our offices, there are a couple little couches or settees there. More often than not, they are occupied by a student waiting to see Dean Teague. Dean Teague dispenses academic advice, dispenses life advice, guidance counsel, and sometimes there's some support that is needed by a graduate to get through the rest of the day or the week or the quarter. Leah, thank you so much. I love you. And then, the faculty and staff colleagues who are not on the stage but are here to root you on, to congratulate you, and to tell you that you made it to the finish line. I want all of my faculty and staff colleagues now to rise to receive our appreciation because you are the ones that have developed these graduates to this point of achievement. Professor Jeremy Consular. Professor Consular, he encounters the students in their first quarter. He teaches civil procedure. Professor Counselor has a remarkable knack in the classroom of making the students not want to disappoint him. You know, you can use a carrot or a stick, and I'm not sure which one that falls, which category applies there, but they don't want to disappoint Professor Counselor, and I think that's a mark of their utmost respect for what he does for them as a teacher. He also is the one who gets them first up, and they have come not knowing often anything about what it means to be in law school or about the law or how they're going to learn the law, how they're going to progress along. And by the end of that first quarter in Civil Pro, they have a pathway, but they also have seen the epitome of excellence in the classroom exemplified by Professor Counselor. Professor Counselor stand out at Baylor Law School as a student, advocacy, mock trial, moot court. He went on to clerk for Ronaldo Garza on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. He went to a firm now called simply Bracewell LLP. He, at one point, after he had joined the faculty, and this is a hallmark of his intellectual curiosity and his desire to speak from firsthand experience. He took off, so to say, from the law school for 6 or 7 months to go to the McLennan County DA's office to try cases there and to see what is it like to be in the criminal prosecution space. And I thought, wow, he was a young faculty member at that time, but I thought, wow, that's somebody who is really concerned about the craft of teaching, about making sure that their experience, their space has been expanded to the point that they feel comfortable in sharing some matters with the law students whom are their proteges. Professor Counselor is also the director of our highly successful summer program in St. Andrews, Scotland, the Academy of the Advocate. And I'm looking across the graduates, a number of them have been to the Academy of the Advocate. Also, Professor Counselor, in his spare time, is the faculty athletic representative of the university to the Big 12. He's busy every day. He's busy teaching. He's busy making it happen. He is such a valued colleague. You have chosen wisely, class. And now I call upon Professor Counselor for your remarks.
Dr. Carini, Dean Tobin, Dean Jackson, colleagues, parents, grandparents, husbands and wives, family and friends, welcome to this celebration of a great accomplishment. Now, family members, I know what you're all thinking because it's the same thing I always think when someone takes to the podium at graduation. How long is this guy going to talk? So don't feel bad about feeling that way, but I want you to know that short graduation speeches are my specialty. They're a habit I developed of necessity. A number of years ago, when another graduating class selected me to be their speaker, I went to my colleague, Professor Mike Rogers, for advice. And he said the key to a good graduation speech is to recognize that nobody is in the audience to hear you talk. They're in the audience to see their loved one walk across the stage. So keep it short, he said. And to make sure I kept it short, Professor Rogers said that I would lose 1 tenure vote for every minute my speech went over 15. He concluded his advice by saying, just remember, nobody cares what you have to say, and if it takes you too long to say it, we will fire you. Graduates, being a part of your commencement is a special privilege. But I also enjoy it because over the years it has confused my children. My wife Jennifer, who's here, we have 3 children, a son Jack who just turned 18 and 2 daughters, Brett and Kate, age 15 and 10. Historically, my children have been thoroughly unimpressed with what I do for a living. When my son was younger, someone asked him what I did, and he said, he types on the computer and sometimes he talks to people. As the years passed, Jack acquired a better understanding of what I do, but it didn't raise my status in his eyes. For a short time, as Dean Tobin said, I worked as a prosecutor here in McLennan County, and we often drive past the courthouse, and my kids like the idea that I work there. It's a beautiful building. While passing the courthouse when Jack was about 9 years old, he said, "You know, Daddy, I think I might want to be a lawyer like you one day." Finally, I thought, a little respect. But he continued. "I just don't understand why you would work at Baylor instead of at the courthouse. When I grow up, I'm not going to be a lawyer who works at Baylor like you. I'm going to be a courthouse lawyer." He paused, and in the ensuing silence, I could almost hear the wheels turning. After about a minute, he said, "Well, I'll be a courthouse lawyer as long as they make as much money as the lawyers who work at Baylor." I said, "Jack, I don't know if you're going to be a courthouse lawyer, but I'm pretty sure you're going to be a lawyer now." My experiences with Jack led me to believe that I had to take a different approach to impressing my younger daughters, Brett and Kate, and graduation once provided me that opportunity when I was decked out in my regalia, a long flowing robe and a hood. When my daughter was about 4, she asked me, "Why are you wearing that robe, Daddy?" I knelt down, I looked into her eyes, and in a hushed, secretive tone, I said, "Because Daddy's a Jedi." I don't know what career path my children will take, lawyer, Jedi, or something else entirely, but graduates, I can tell you that if one day one of my children sits where you sit now, I will be very proud of them. I will be proud because I know how much work it takes to be able to sit where you sit, and the good character it requires to do what you have done. So family members, congratulations and rejoice, because your beloved graduates are outstanding young men and women, and they will continue to make you very proud. So now we have come to the part where I am supposed to share some wisdom with you. That's a problem. Because even assuming for the sake of argument I have some wisdom to share, don't you think I should have shared it with you by now? I mean, we have been here together for 3 years and I get paid to teach you. So I'm not going to try to share any wisdom with you. Instead, I have a request of you. And it's going to seem like an odd request, at least initially. But what I want from you and from the rest of your generation is something I think we are sorely lacking right now. And it's this: civility. That is what I want from you. You see, this is not just a graduation. It's not just the end of your time in law school. This is a commencement. It's the beginning of something. And not just the beginning of your legal career. This commencement is an important part of the process whereby we gradually hand over the responsibility for leading our communities, our state, and our nation to a new generation, you. And as lawyers, you will play an outsized responsibility, or an outsized role in bearing that responsibility. Indeed, the track record of Baylor Law's alumni makes it safe to assume that some of you will serve as elected officials or as other high officials in our state and federal governments. So civility is important for you, I think. And when I say civility, I don't mean formal pleasantries. That's not what I mean. I mean it in the sense of being a good citizen, especially in the way we conduct our public and political discourse. We are leaving your generation with some big problems, and you can't solve them unless you can improve upon the older generation's recent track record on the civility front. For example, you're going to have to deal with the national debt. I know, I sound like a codger, even to myself, as I say those words. But this problem, I think, is reaching a critical mass. We have come to the point when the national debt exceeds the size of our tremendous economy, and it continues to grow. And you won't be able to kick the can down the road like we've done so far. Your generation will have to solve the problem by making the tough choices we could not. Here's another example. Scientists tell us that human activity may have caused irreparable damage to the planet that you and your children have to live on. I'll rush to say, I'm a hypocrite for even mentioning climate change. I used to be an environmental litigator, and I didn't represent the Sierra Club. I have never been on the same side of a case as the baby seals or the trees. What's more, I grew up in Humble, Texas. I don't know if you know anything about Humble, Texas, but it suffices to say that pulling fossil fuels out of the ground is kind of what we do. But to meet this challenge, you will have to persuade people like me that the sacrifices are necessary to solve the problem. And you'll have to overcome more than just the financial disincentives associated with tackling the problem. You'll have to convince people that carbon emissions are heating the earth, melting the polar ice, raising sea levels, and that drought, famine, cataclysmic weather, and animal extinction are going to make it far harder to live on this planet. As the great Westerosi philosopher Tyrion Lannister once said, people's minds aren't made for problems that large. And that's just a couple of things that you're up against. And these two problems might not be the ones most concerning to you, but I use them here because they're of a piece in the sense that they are getting worse, which means that they are increasingly more difficult to solve. They are also similar in that so far we have been unable to reach consensus about how to tackle them or even whether or not they are actually problems. To be sure, reasonable substantive disagreements exist about best solutions. But why haven't we been able to reconcile those differences and find common ground? I think an erosion of civility and the quality of our public and political discourse largely is to blame. I think you'll have to fix that problem before you can fix any of the others. To bring a new civility to our nation, I think you'll have to end, or at least moderate, the all too common practice of demonizing people who disagree with you. This should come fairly easy for you graduates. I don't believe during law school any of you ever asked a judge to grant a motion because your opponent is a bad person, even if you thought that they were. But it's an entirely different story in our public discourse. I'll confess that I'm a news junkie and I watch and read all sorts of it, from the most liberal to the most conservative sources. I see this practice most on primetime cable news, radio shows, and the internet. The message is this: this person is bad because they disagree with us, or he disagrees with us. You shouldn't believe this person's argument because they're bad. Such ad hominem attacks seem like intellectual comfort food until you actually meet some of the demons. The demon who desperately wants that border wall you loathe is a widow who spends her days praying over every name on the church prayer list and making meals for shut-ins. The demon who wants an expensive government-funded health care program is just struggling to pay the medical expenses of a beloved aging parent. Now, people's personal struggles and desires don't make them right on the issues, but they can help us understand that they aren't demons. It's important because you can sit down and talk about how to solve problems with widows and caregivers. It's hard to sit down and talk about problems with demons. If you're going to solve these problems, you'll have to speak to people with whom you disagree. And as lawyers, I think you need to lead others by example in the proper way to make compelling arguments without levying personal attacks against your opponents. You can improve civility by being willing to compromise on solutions to problems. Imagine that you're sitting in a meeting, maybe it's a church meeting or a school meeting or a business meeting, and somebody attending the meeting says, I'm not even going to discuss this issue. I want 100% of what I want, or I'm going home. That's not leadership. That's not virtuous. It's childish. We don't tolerate that kind of behavior in our work lives or in our charitable work, and consequently, it rarely happens in those contexts. We expect a give and a take. In contrast, we not only tolerate it in our public and political discourse, too often we root for it and celebrate it. It's okay to drive a hard bargain. We want you to drive a hard bargain. Just don't forget about the bargain part. I'm not asking you to abandon deeply held convictions just to reach a compromise, but an unwillingness to seek common ground should not be one of those deeply held convictions. Only spoiled children get 100% of what they want 100% of the time. As you begin lives of service and leadership, I hope you'll remember that your idea of perfect is the enemy of the good. Tell the truth, even when it's hard, and demand the same from other leaders, even the ones you like. I know you learned this in law school. We taught you to never surrender your credibility, not even when a lie might give you an advantage. I wish all of our elected leaders and officials would adhere to that principle, but even they deserve some grace and forgiveness. After all, who amongst us has not told a lie at some point? I confess, however, that I give that grace and forgiveness for the liars I generally agree with, rather than the ones I don't. I will watch a politician dodge, conceal, distort inconvenient facts, or just falsely claim they aren't facts, and I'll let it slide because I like what the politician is saying or trying to accomplish. I'll see a different politician whose viewpoint I don't agree with use precisely the same tactics, and it will outrage me. I think you've got to do better than me. I think it's important for your generation to demand consistently the unvarnished truth from all leaders, even if they're on your side. We are bombarded from all directions with spin and outright lies to such an extent that it has become difficult to discern what the facts are. If law school has taught you nothing else, I hope it has taught you that you can't solve a problem until you have accurately identified it. To restore meaningful civility, you'll have to be willing to make hard choices. The problems I mentioned earlier, the national debt, the climate change, I use them as examples not because they're the only problems, but because they are problems we have not been able to fully confront. I think the simplest explanation for why we haven't is because we decided to make your choices harder so that ours could be easier. I don't think you'll have our luxury of laying off your problems to future generations. You're going to have to make the choices we have avoided. My dad once told me that I needed to learn the difference between a difficult decision and a decision I wished I didn't have to make. A difficult decision is when you reach a fork in the road and you don't know which path to take. But sometimes you are certain about which path you have to take. You just don't want to walk it. Our inaction on problems such as these has foreclosed some of the paths that might have otherwise been open had we acted sooner. So what is left to you are not so much difficult decisions as they are questions about whether or not you'll have the courage to walk the remaining paths. Despite the tremendous challenges you face, I am optimistic about your generation's ability to overcome those challenges. I believe you do have the courage to walk the hard paths. But not everyone shares my confidence about your generation. And that's putting it mildly. That is putting it mildly. A recent Forbes article summed it up this way: criticizing your generation is the new national pastime. According to one description of you, you are narcissistic, entitled, and lazy. Lazy? Really? You're the only ones who've ever been lazy? I have a beard because I don't want to shave. I think those descriptions are painting with too broad a brush. Here's what I see. Your generation has already led on issues that have befuddled older generations, like climate change and gun violence. You do not seem as divided by race, religion, or creed as the older generations. And here's one thing that frankly makes the criticism of you upsetting even to me, and I hope to you as well. Your generation has fought bravely in wars you didn't start at a time you can hardly remember. Shana diffused bombs in Afghanistan, for crying out loud, and others of you served as well. And who are we to criticize you anyway, when we are leaving you with profound problems while we struggle to keep the government open for more than 3 weeks at a time? So frankly, I hope the criticism of you puts a chip on your shoulder and that you go out and lead like a generation that has a chip on your shoulder. For my part, I think your generation has what it takes to improve civility in this country and to solve the big problems. And I know for a fact that the Baylor Law School class of 2019 has what it takes. I know what it took for you to reach this point. So to paraphrase Winston Churchill, you haven't journeyed all the way to this milestone we celebrate today because you're made of sugar candy. Baylor Law School doesn't give diplomas to snowflakes. So I want you to grab the sword by the hilt, pull it from the stone, and show us how it's done. Become the leaders we all need you to be. Thank you, graduates, for the honor of teaching you these last few years. Stay in touch. Congratulations, and may God bless you.
The fact that you all stood to applaud, I think, says enough about the thoughts, the wisdom, the gems that Professor Consular has shared. Your obligation now is to remember them and, of course, to act upon them. I now call Provost Carini to the podium for some brief remarks.
Thank you, Dean Tobin. What a privilege to have heard that. I mean, the framing is just incredible. Can we have another round of applause? This really sticks. It reminds me how honored we are, all of us as faculty, students, and all of you here, just honored to be part of this, and what a memory this is creating along several dimensions. I'm honored to be with you, and as I think about the mission statement, I want to read this to you. Part of the mission statement to the grads, as you take this in just for a moment. What you're to do, consistent with Professor Counselor's comment, is to assume leadership positions charged with in a profession that is charged with responsibility for maintaining and improving the nation's system of justice. If that is not lofty and challenging, paying with civility that we all desperately need in a world that is craving to be civil, to see the joining of dialogue and not to be parting in different ways. You get to do it. You get to be Baylor lawyers who have a significant influence. Are you already leaders? Are we declaring you a leader right now? Absolutely not. We're not declaring any one of us a leader. We're all in process. I think of Professor Dweck at Stanford University who said, there's a dynamic mind and a static mind. So we can say we're leaders and then we stop learning. And with that and the challenge and this Baylor Law degree going forward, you're in the dynamic mind. Keep learning, keep being curious, pursue, maintain the perseverance and tenacity. I bet several of you wanted to quit several times during this tough curriculum. I know I did in our graduate programs 50 times at least. And you pick up your shoes and you take the dust off and you keep going, not knowing what will happen. Some of you thought you were crazy pursuing a law degree, giving up a job, not knowing what your job would be, all of that. And you're here because you have a greater calling from God to serve society in ways that will surprise you. I would encourage you to lean in and lean in strongly. Be surprised with the stories that you'll tell 10 years from now that'll start with the following words: I never thought I would, or I never thought I would get to. In fact, that's all of our stories on this stage. No one of us at your point in your career said, or our career said, I'm going to be a professor in a business school. I look at my background. I was a zoology undergraduate major, really. I was thinking about working in zoos and looking at animals, and that's not what's going on here. So I don't mean to apply that. No, not now. I'm going to get myself in big trouble. But it's interesting. But as I look back on, why now, why Baylor, why business, why law, whatever your profession is here represented by friends and family, the Lord took you on that unanticipated pathway. Let it be unanticipated. As we look at the word leadership, and I put this into our friend Amazon, I thought, well, how many leadership books have been published in the last 12 months? And my number in my mind was, okay, let me have a big number, 500. No, it's not 10,000, it's 96,857 in the last 12 months. That means we haven't figured this thing out. If that doesn't tell us there's work to do, and again, I go back to so many of the themes that Professor Counselors talk, that we pursue that. My encouragement is remain curious, notice new things, bring your insight, your perseverance, your tenacity, your framing of arguments in that rigorous way that you've been exposed to. That is a gift, and now give that gift to the rest of us. So congratulations, and I think, Dean Tobin, we are ready to confer the degrees.
Thank you, Provost Carini. Each of the candidates seated before you have completed the requirements for the degree of Juris Doctor, as prescribed by the faculty of the School of Law and by Baylor University, acting through the authority of the Baylor University Board of Regents. It is my pleasure, Provost Carini, to present them to you for the conferral of the degree.
Thank you, Dean Tobin. Each of you has completed the requirements for the Juris Doctorate set forth by the Baylor University School of Law. And upon the certification of Dean Tobin and the faculty of the law school, and on behalf of the Baylor University Board of Regents, it is my pleasure to confer you and upon you the degree of Juris Doctor. Congratulations.
We will now proceed forward to the award of the diplomas and the hooding of each of our graduates. We are in a beautiful space here in the sanctuary of First Baptist Church. For those of you who are not familiar with Baylor Law traditions, let me cue you in. Despite the beauty and solemnity of the surroundings, we have a long tradition. It is that when the name of your graduate is called, you make as much noise as you possibly can. Now, if you feel reticent because of the solemnity of the structure, remember this: we measure the depth of your love for your graduate by the decibels that you produce.
Jessica Marie Arnold. James Christopher Bearden. Brianna Jean Bergstrom. Morgan Kaylee Blair. Brenda Marietta Carrera. Marion Margaret Charles. Kyle Austin Coker. Jess Michael Gambrell. Carrie Colleen Gorner, cum laude. Christina Melanie Gray, magna cum laude. Changing of the rows. Give us just a moment. Abigail Lee Griffith, cum laude. Courtney Lynn Haggett. Charles Emmerich Hardy, Jr. Luis E. Herrera Sebastian. Daniel Milan Krishnovic. Chase N. Lalouette. John Edward Niemeyer. Rainier Ann Osuli. James Brian Walker Shepherd. Anthony Taylor Stokes. Shayna Marie Hayes Swanson, magna cum laude and the highest ranking student. Leah Ann Tao, magna cum laude. Leah Catherine Tucker.
And let's now hear for all of them. Thank you all for being a part of creating a memory, a lifetime memory for these graduates. So we're looking forward as they move ahead in life and career for them to heed the lessons of Professor Komsler in his superb remarks this morning, and to continue to make us proud, and you'll be making us proud as Baylor lawyers. Remember that we are a service profession. The words of the 18th century cleric John Wesley, do all the good that you can by all the means that you can, at all the times that you can, in all the places that you can, for as long as you can. The horizontal and vertical dimensions of our life and our faith life. I thank Dean Teague and our registrar Jerry Cunningham for arrangements this morning, all the logistics of this wonderful ceremony. I also thank Meredith Meyer and Susie Daniel, Nick Texera in our office, and Danielle and Katie, Danielle Brackett and Katie Johnson, our student workers. That's the team that puts it all together. You've done a splendid job with everything. Thank you. We will now have the recessional. We will go out into the narthex, but please remain seated. We're going to be right back out that door, in this door, and we're going to have a class photo. Following the class photo, I invite you all, of course, to join us at the Sheila and Walter Humphrey Law Center for a reception in the student lounge area in River Terrace area, which is sponsored by the Baylor Law Alumni Association. Also, we have all the doors unlocked around the courtrooms and classrooms and the like, so your graduate can take you to where they shed blood or whatever else they may tell you. And with that, God bless, and we are adjourned.
Are we not up here? Oh, okay. I thought that's weird. They got faculty first.